On Discord today, I got a question from a friend, and this is something I actually talked about with a client yesterday as well. So I think it's a good time to talk about this topic in depth. Billy, I remember you once talked about being realistic in your life choices to avoid suffering. What were your insights into that? How does someone know what they really want to avoid getting in an automatic pilot kind of a life? So, this is a prior conversation I've had with this friend. The first part first. We need to be realistic in our life choices to avoid suffering. What's really meant by that is it's okay to want a lot of things out of your life, right? It gives you energy to try out new things. It motivates you to try things that you haven't done before. It motivates you to put in that extra mile. You know kind of what it's like to push yourself, risk some things and things like that. Those are all good things. Those are all good experiences. Those are all good qualities to have in your life. When it gets dicey, though, when it starts venturing into the area of suffering, is this: I need to do all of these things. But in our life, you will find that realistically, you are going to be confined to some sort of a limitation of how much you can do with your life. So, personally, for me, right, I would love to train 3 or 4 times in the week every week. So, that's my ideal desired state. I want to train a lot, jujitsu. But the thing is, my body is not that it's not that athletic. My nutrition isn't all that great, and I don't sleep that much to have a meaningful recovery. So what happens is every few weeks I get a herpes outbreak because I have herpes simplex type A, and that prevents me from sparring with people and going to train jiu-jitsu because this happens to be contagious, right? Or I might get a little sick. Why? Because my immunity goes down because jiu-jitsu is a very physically taxing sport. So, yeah, it's nice to have that goal of training consistently. But I have to understand, with this body that's not genetically gifted for sports and athletics, being able to train this much already is kind of a blessing. So I need to be able to call the line of satisfaction. You know what? This is good. What I have right now, it's not necessarily bad. But the more we want things, the more we yearn things, especially things that don't really come naturally to us, especially things that are not realistic for us, the more likely it is that we are going to suffer. But again, the important thing is you're not I'm not arguing you shouldn't have these things. No, you should definitely have aspirations. You should definitely have big purposes and goals for your life. But you have to know that sometimes you will be limited by your reality. But with that said, right? How do we know what we really want to do with our lives? And especially, how do we know that when we do something, we're not going to regret it? This is a very tough question for people because in this day and age, we don't really want to make wrong investments. We want to make good investments with our time and money because everything is kind of a rare commodity these days, right? So it makes sense that we don't want to make investments that are going to be questionable or we're going to regret later. Okay. So the more we are regret averse, the more we want to be preemptively good. But because we are not fortune tellers, the reality of the situation right now is that we don't know. Would it be ideal if we knew? Yes. But the reality of where we are at right now is that we don't know. That has to be the foundational point. Okay, so we don't know. How are we going to know? There's only one way to know, and that's by experience. Let me pull up a drawing board. So, I might have a question for you. What is your favorite Korean food? If you're not a Korean, you probably don't know what Korean food you like. So how are you going to find out? Well, you can Google Korean food and things like that, right? You can try to find out what is it, what is the food that I like eating based, if I like, tortillas, what would I like as the, my Korean version of tortillas or whatever, right? But the thing is, you're only going to definitely know by experience. But the thing is, just because you have Korean food once, right? Are you gonna know what your favorite Korean food is? No. You're going to have to try a lot of different, Korean foods, right? So sometimes you'll try kalbi, sometimes you'll try, Korean fried chicken, sometimes you'll try a soup. You're gonna try a lot of different Korean foods, and then you're gonna eventually arrive at the Korean food that you like. But what if uh this particular food you didn't enjoy, but next time you have it at a restaurant, it's like, whoa, this restaurant actually makes a really good kalbi. So um I thought I didn't like kalbi, but okay, I like kalbi. It's just that the last restaurant kind of sucked. So what I'm saying is, the more experiences with Korean food you have, in general, the more you are going to be able to identify what your favorite Korean food is, right? So this is the very simple fact of life. Regardless of what you do, in your life, how are you going to know if it's the right decision for you? Well, the only way to know is simply by experiencing it. But we are, unfortunately, in this day and age, experience averse. Why? Because so there's many reasonings behind this, but I think we tend to be experience averse because we look at experiences in a binary way. So these are all different shapes, right? But if we just divide this into black or gray, then we can categorize it into these two, either this or the outside, right? So that's a very reductive way of looking at things. Because again, these are all different shapes, but we are not accounting for all the differences and all the nuances, and we are reducing it into, is this A or B? So the greatest reduction that happens these days is it good or bad? But life doesn't always give you these binary experiences. Sometimes something will have parts that are good and something will have parts that are bad. Sometimes something that will have a really bad part is also going to have a really wonderful part. And here's the kicker though. One experience. So suppose you have experience one, right? And with experience one, you go through this kind of a journey. With experience two, you have this kind of a journey. With experience three, you have this kind of a journey. But the thing is, later down the line, you never know when parts of experience number one are going to come in handy later down the line. So why go through experience one, two, and three? Well, you may have had a specific intent behind going through these experiences, right? But what I'm saying is, later down the line, in the future, suppose you are doing something completely new and you are going for experience X, experience Y, and experience Z. You never know how a little experience that you had in experience number one is going to impact you in experience Y into the future. So many of magical life experiences come with these kinds of opportunities. The more we are open to experiencing different things in life, the more rich our lives become, even when we don't realize it. So, how do we get to know what we want? How do we get to know what we don't want? We know by experience. And I want you to be experience attracted, not experience averse. Now, on to the final topic. But how do we not regret? I think we tend to regret when it's too late. So, this must mean that we are not stopping and reviewing frequently enough. So, it's important to have a practice in our life that serves as a checkpoint. For me, I have a daily checkpoint. That's my daily Buddhist practices. And I have an annual Buddhist retreat that I go to. And from there, I do like an annual check of how my year has been going as a Buddhist practitioner. So you can have your quarterly checks or semi-annual checks and things like that, right? But it's important. If you're feeling like you're having too many regrets, then it's not the right decision to stop having experiences. It may be that you need more checkpoints into your life. But again, there's some extra factors that complicate this, right? What if you're just really paranoid and everything's gonna be bad? That's kind of a different topic. But for the purposes of this discussion, remember, having experiences is very important, and you never know what one experience is going to lead to. Sometimes it'll be bad, sometimes it'll be good. You never know. But knowing is so much better than wondering what could have been.